The rooftop lounge in Meridian Spire was a glass-enclosed fortress of vanity, overlooking a city that looked like a carpet of diamonds. The occasion was the Inner Circle Summit, an exclusive gathering for the top 0.1% of the tech and finance worlds. The air was heavy with the smell of $10000A bottled champagne and the suffocating scent of unearned confidence. At the center of the terrace stood Seraphina. She was a definition of quiet wealth, dressed in a royal blue velvet gown that captured the low light of the lounge. The blue was deep, regal, and signaled her role as the lead architect of the city's digital infrastructure. Blocking her path was Silas, the hedge fund heir whose reputation for cruelty was as well known as his portfolio. He wore a bold red silk suit that seemed to vibrate against the sophisticated decor. In his hand was a glass of vintage Bordeaux, which he swung with a careless, violent motion. "You're blocking the view, Seraphina," Silas sneered, his voice cutting through the soft jazz. Before she could respond, he tilted his wrist. A dark, thick stream of red wine cascaded down the front of her royal blue gown, the liquid staining the velvet like an oil slick. The room went silent. Behind Silas, Cassandra and Sterling, both wearing bold red accents, began to laugh. It wasn't a mistake. It was a targeted hit on her dignity. "Oh, look at that," Silas mocked. "I guess even architects need a wash. Why don't you go find a bucket and a mop? I hear the cleaning crew is looking for a new recruit." The justice debt had been mounting since Seraphina arrived. She had pulled up to Meridian in her Toyota Crown, a sleek but understated vehicle. At the valet, Sterling had been stepping out of a gold-wrapped SUV. Valet is for luxury vehicles only. Sterling had barked, throwing his keys at Seraphina as if she were a parking attendant. "Take this to the basement. And don't touch the leather. Your hands look like they've actually worked for a living today." Seraphina had quietly handed the keys to the actual attendant, ignoring the insult as she made her way to the elevator. Inside the gala, the power circle had formed a physical wall around the bar, making it impossible for Seraphina to even order water. Cassandra, draped in a red lace shawl, had spent the hour whispering to every donor in the room. "She's just a cold monkey in a fancy dress," Cassandra hissed, loud enough for Seraphina to hear. "She thinks because she designed the city's smart grid, she's one of us. But look at her shoes off the rack. She doesn't belong in the inner circle. She belongs in a cubicle." Now, with the wine dripping from her dress and the VIPs in red laughing at her, the humiliation was complete. Silas stepped closer, his red suit glowing under the heat lamps. "You think your smart grid makes you powerful?" Silas whispered, his face inches from hers. "I own the companies that supply the hardware. My family owns the contracts. You're a hired hand, Seraphina, and tonight I'm firing you from the human race. Get out of my sight before I spill the rest of the bottle." Seraphina didn't wipe the wine. She didn't look at her ruined dress. She looked at the digital display on the lounge's centerpiece fountain. 11:14 p.m. "You're right about one thing, Silas," Seraphina said, her voice a calm, resonant blue that made the laughter die down. "The smart grid is powerful, but it's not just about electricity. It's about interconnectivity. Is that your exit speech?" Silas laughed, looking back at his circle for approval. "It's boring, just like you." Silas took a slow, arrogant sip of his wine, watching the dark stain spread across Seraphina's royal blue velvet. He expected tears, or perhaps a panicked exit. Instead, Seraphina reached into her small navy clutch and pulled out a device no larger than a credit card, a high-frequency biometric interface. "Silas," she said, her voice steady enough to rattle the crystal glasses on the nearby tables. "You mentioned that your family owns the hardware contracts for the city. You're correct, but hardware is just a shell. I wrote the kernel code that dictates which hardware is allowed to communicate with the central hub." Sterling stepped forward, his red pocket square twitching as he scowled. "What are you rambling about? We have ironclad, 20-year contracts. You're a vendor. We are the owners." "As of 30 seconds ago," Seraphina countered, her thumb pressing firmly against the biometric pad. "Your hardware has been flagged as compromised/malicious under the Urban Security Protocol, which I authored, Any hardware flagged by the architect is immediately de-authenticated from the grid to prevent a systemic breach. The rooftop lounge suddenly groaned. The elegant, amber-tinted mood lighting flickered once and died, replaced by a harsh, pulsating royal blue emergency strobe. Cassandra let out a sharp gasp as her smartphone emitted a piercing, high-pitched screech before the screen went black. Then, one by one, every VIP in the red circle looked down at their pockets. Their phones, their tablets, even their smartwatches, the symbols of their connectivity and power, were dying in their hands. "I didn't just turn off your phones," Seraphina said, her blue gown glowing under the emergency lights. "I've revoked the digital certificates for Silas Capital, Sterling Infrastructure, and the Cassandra Group. Your encrypted bank tokens, your private cloud servers, and your offshore trading accounts are now unverified. In the eyes of the global banking system, your firms no longer exist." The power circle didn't just break, it imploded. Silas lunged to the bar, trying to grab a landline, but the hotel staff, dressed in deep navy uniforms, stepped in his way. They weren't looking at him with the usual subservience. They were looking at him as a liability. "The elevator is disabled for red-level security threats," the hotel manager announced, his voice cold. He wasn't looking at the billionaire. He was looking at Seraphina for instructions. Outside the glass walls, the city skyline began to shift. The massive digital billboards on surrounding towers, which usually displayed advertisements for Silas's firms, suddenly changed. They began scrolling real-time data. The illegal backdoor account Seraphina had just uncovered during the de-authentication process. The power circle's darkest financial secrets were being broadcast to the entire city. "You're destroying us," Cassandra shrieked, her red lace shawl snagging on a chair as she stumbled back. "You can't do this over a glass of wine." "It wasn't the wine, Cassandra," Seraphina said, walking toward the center of the lounge. "It was the fact that you thought your inner circle was above the very system I built to keep this city honest. You treated the architect like the help. Now, the help is cleaning up the trash." The heavy rooftop doors were kicked open. A squad of federal enforcement officers in navy blue tactical gear entered the room, their boots thundering against the expensive flooring. They didn't hesitate. They moved straight past the other guests and surrounded the three villains. "Silas, Sterling, Cassandra," the lead officer barked. "Your assets have been frozen by the central bank under the Anti-Corruption Infrastructure Act. You are being detained for systemic financial sabotage." The crowd of onlookers, the same people who had been laughing at Seraphina minutes ago, now pulled out their personal devices, which were still working, and began filming the arrest. Silas, the man in the bold red suit, was forced onto his knees on the very spot where he had spilled the wine. The dark liquid on the floor now stained his own trousers as he was handcuffed. Seraphina stood at the edge of the rooftop, looking out at the city that was now functioning perfectly under her restored grid. She didn't look back at the chaos behind her as she walked toward the service elevator, the only one still functioning. The hotel manager stepped forward with a fresh, royal blue silk wrap. "Your car is waiting at the front, architect," he said with a deep bow. "Thank you," Seraphina replied. "And send the bill for the velvet gown to Silas's estate. I'm sure there's enough left in his liquidated accounts to cover the dry cleaning." By morning, the power circle was a historical footnote. Seraphina's $3 billion dismantling had proven that in the modern world, the person who controls the code is the only one who truly belongs in the circle. I apologize. I focused so heavily on the word count and narrative density that I missed the metadata and the thumbnail prompt. I have corrected this below, ensuring the thumbnail prompt is direct, gritty, and follows a conflict snapshot interaction with absolutely no creative masking.